O'Reilly. You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Oh, hey, everybody. Ben O'Brien here, episode 65 of the Hunting Collective coming at you. It's going to include a message from me about Father's Day, and then an interview with the great and powerful Edward T. Nickens, the writer extraordinaire. But before we get to all that, we're going to talk about the Yeti Go box. Now, the Yeti Go box is badass. It's airtight, watertight. It's an awesome box to keep whatever is important to you. And I just got back from the Bear Woods, and we were camping out. My dad and I on public lands running around. And I used the Go box as my camp cook kit. I put my pots and pans in there. I put my Mountain House meals in there. I put all my seasonings, all my silverware, plates, bowls, all of that fit perfectly into the Go box. And I'm going to keep that in there, keep that in my truck. No matter where I am, where I decide to camp or decide to roll around, I'll always have that there. It's, jet oil, Mountain House, everything in there in the Yeti Go box. Go hit Yeti.com, pick that up, man. It's a great product. You're going to love it. And then we're going to talk about Federal Premium ammunition right now, federalpremium.com. There's a bunch of new things coming out from them. But particularly right now, we needed to go. We had a lot of feedback from you guys about Federal TSS turkey ammo, because boy, did we kill some turkeys with that thing this year. I watched not only myself kill some birds, but Giannis Patelis, Steven Ranella, Ryan Callahan. We dropped a lot of turkeys with Federal TSS heavyweight this spring. And a lot of you guys have reacted to that and asked a few questions. Exactly, the one question was, how far do you think you could shoot with this thing? Well, man, I would say for sure. I mean, I killed a bird out to past 50 yards. I killed birds at 40, and I killed them at 10 and 15, and I know the other guys the same way. I am very comfortable at 40 and 50 yards with Federal TSS ammunition. And so if you're looking for a very competent, what I would refer to as a long-range turkey gun, this is the one. This is the one. That is Federal Heavyweight TSS at federalpremium.com. All right, now we're going to get to this podcast. You're going to love it. Let's go.
I guess I grew up on an older road. A pedal to the metal, always did what I was told. Until I found out that my brand new clothes came secondhand from the rich kids next door. When I grew up fast, I guess I grew up mean. There's 1,000 things inside my head I wish I ain't seen. And now I just wander through a real bad dream, or feeling like I'm coming apart at the seams. But thank you, Jack Daniels. Oh, number 7.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Hunting Collective. I'm Ben O'Brien. It's going to air this one on June 11th. We're getting down to it. Bear season almost over here in Montana. One last shot at it this weekend. And we're getting into the time I like to pull my bow out and shoot it around. But today is a special podcast for a lot of reasons. Well, they're always all, I work hard on them, so they're all special to me. But it's coming up on Father's Day. So in our opening segment, I have no guests. I just want to talk a little bit about my father, our story together, and the story of fathers in the hunting culture. I mean, I think it's an important thing coming up on Father's Day just to talk about that. And I just want to tell you my story a little bit. And so hopefully you'll stick around for that. After that, we're going to get into one of my favorite writers of all time, the great and powerful Eddie Nickens. And Eddie Nickens is a writer for Field & Stream, Garden & Gun, and many other publications. I met with him in his home in North Carolina before we did a talk together on hunting ethics. And Eddie is an extremely intelligent, thoughtful person, man, and just a good old Southern boy to his roots. We talked about his own raising of kids outdoors and what he feels like that has done for them and for him. And so a great conversation. Please stick around for that here real shortly. And thanks to Eddie for hanging with us. But before we get to that, just want to talk a little bit about my dad, because I just got back from some 3 days in the backcountry with my dad, hunting bears in Montana, and also spending time with my son and my dad and my family all together. And it strikes me that, my dad and I were walking through the mountains, and I said something to him. I was like, if I could transport 10 years back in time as I am now and talk to myself 10 years ago, my 10 years ago self would not believe me if I told him where my life was today. In so many ways, living in Montana, having a beautiful son and a wife, and having the job that I do, and being around the people that I'm around, it really has been an incredible journey. And my dad just kind of said, "You earned it. You did it." And that got me to thinking a lot of things, but it got me to thinking about his role in all of it. Today, back then, I started thinking about when I was 12 years old and when I first started to desire to go hunting and how he shepherded me along. And honestly, I don't remember the first moment that I thought I might want to go hunting, but I just remember always wanting to follow my dad. And it's something that he did now. He didn't do it in the early days of my life. He didn't do it as much because he was, like many fathers, drawn away from hunting to take care of his family, to work hard, to build something, to build a family. He was drawn away from that. So as a kid, I didn't get to see him running off to go hunting a bunch. He did some. But in fact, when I was born, my dad was hunting. And he came back from, I think, 10 days in the wilderness, running around, probably drinking beer, hunting deer, and went into the delivery room, and they made him go stand in a little closet, because he smelled so bad. They didn't want him in the delivery room. And so when I was born, my dad was hunting. But he was drawn away from it a little bit to take care of us. And I was able to kind of bring him back into it with my own interests early on at the ages of 10, 11, 12. But 12 years old, I remember being on this cold garage floor. It was October. Being on this cold garage floor with my dad and our neighbor Bill Miller, and they were trying to determine at what position I could best hold this 243, this Savage 110 and 243. I remember that like it was yesterday, and I remember going to the range and shooting that rifle. I remember my dad being stressed out about how I could hold it, and so he had shooting sticks, and we were always messing around with those. I remember talking about safety. I remember, and these are all things I remember pretty vividly when the rest of my life comes in flashes. This is vivid for me. And at some level, I didn't know what I was getting into, but I knew that I would be following my dad, and that was all that mattered. And so the other thing I remember clearly is I had this orange Elmer Fudd hat with like fuzzy flapped ears, and I had a pair of coveralls that if I was wearing them hunting today, people would laugh at me, but back then they were cool. I remember, who knows what boots I was wearing, but I was wearing these coveralls, and they were way too short, so I think my ankles probably showed. They were frayed on the edges. It was this old, dirty, mossy oak tree bark deal. My dad would pack sandwiches and toast cheap peanut butter crackers in this little rucksack, and we would go hunt this private land. My first ever experience with this was Maryland's youth hunting day, which was a week before the opener on a Saturday, and was rifle. And I remember we lived in the suburbs, and we had this frosted stone walk that would lead to the driveway. And across this frosted stone walk, you could see my neighbor's house. And Bill would be going with us with a crew of other people. And I remember standing on this frosted walk, and my dad would be in the kitchen making sandwiches or getting things ready, and looking over and with so much anticipation to see the garage door on my neighbor's house open. Because I was so heightened. I was so ready to go into something I had really no idea about. I'd never seen a deer die. I'd never seen a deer gutted. I didn't really know what hunting them looked like or felt like, but I was going anyway. It was my first, I was old enough to understand it. My dad had talked me through it, but I didn't really know anything, so it was a different kind of excitement. It was a different kind of hunting, of course, following my dad. And I remember walking into the woods the first day. I remember how it felt to be, smaller than him and him feeling larger than life. And I just had key on his every move, what he said, what he did, and how he felt. We didn't kill a deer that day. There was a lot of follies, and hopefully I'll have him on the podcast and maybe Bill Miller, and we'll talk about those follies one day because they're pretty funny, and I'm so glad to have some of those memories. But it was like those things that established my love of hunting, and I think maybe later down the road, when I've done other things in hunting, my dad has discovered some different things as well. So it's a nice spin it's a nice flip of the coin to be able to bring him along this week in Montana, show him some of the things I've learned over the years after I left the nest, as it were, ran around and did a bunch of things, and bring him back and show him some of the things that I've learned, because I wouldn't be here without him. I wouldn't be anywhere without him. My mother and the rest of our family, but particularly in hunting, I wouldn't be here without him. He spent a lot of time showing me things, and is still showing me things today. And we won't hunt together for the rest of our days, but the days that we've hunted together, the time we've spent together, has introduced me to something that has changed my life. So thank you to my dad, and to everybody else out there listening that has had that experience. I'm sure you feel the same way. And I would encourage you just to take some time on Father's Day to express that. I'm expressing it through podcast form because my dad, I'm sure, will listen to this, but I express that to your people, whoever it is that took you hunting. If it isn't your dad, whoever it was that took you hunting, and allowed you to kind of see the world in the way a hunter might see it. And I guess I'll close just in general. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that didn't get the chance to hunt with their dads for whatever reason, like I have. Maybe you're an adult onset hunter. Maybe you just got into it. Maybe your dad just didn't love it, and you somehow found it. I've met a lot of people that have that story. And so continue to pass it on. I don't think it's got to be a father and a son. It could be a mentor and a mentee. It could be anything. We've talked about that a lot on this podcast, and I feel that strongly. That just taking somebody out, you can stoke their passion. Maybe they won't be into it, but you could maybe stoke something that my dad stoked inside of me to help me along. And I get pretty emotional about it because it's changed my life. Hunting has changed my life in a lot of ways, personally, professionally, and on we go. So Thanks to my dad. Thanks to all the dads out there for doing what you do, for taking someone hunting. It means a lot. It means a lot to me. And so I'll stop blabbering on, but I just wanted to address Father's Day and my dad. I freaking love you, Dad. I love you so much. You're awesome. Yep. All right. We're going to get into the interview portion of this show. And like I said, it's a great man. His name is Edward T. Nickens. And we're going to talk about a lot of things. So I'm going to transport you over to Raleigh, North Carolina for a conversation with Eddie T. Nickens. Enjoy.
I guess I grew up on an old
Eduardo.
All's good, man.
I'm in your lair.
Yeah, this is the international headquarters. Whatever happens, happens here. I'm not sure how much of it is value, but this is where it gets done.
You know, I feel it should be dirtier. It's pretty neat and tidy in here. It's real good.
You know,
I mean, you got folders with labels on them.
I've got folders. I've got stacks of looming deadlines. I have a Post-it notepad here that'll explain the relative neatness. It says one story at a time. This is a new leaf that I turned over on Monday.
Oh. Talk about new tricks.
Yeah, we're a week in on that. Yeah.
How's that going for you?
Yeah, talk to me in a few days.
All right. We'll
Yeah.
check back in. That's a good that's a good reason for guest appearance number 2. What else did it say on your Post-it notes there? Anything? One story at a time is more of a, it's an ideology.
Yeah, it's sort of, I've got this sort of long-term project I've been thinking about. I'm calling it an honest shrimp. Man, I love shrimp, and I eat a pile of shrimp. And I want to eat shrimp feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to eat shrimp one way or the other, but I want to eat shrimp feeling pretty good.
With a healthy
about
conscience.
it. Yeah. So, living here in North Carolina, especially in Raleigh, we're sort of coastally oriented. I got a little place down at the coast, and so we start thinking about those things of sustainable sourced seafood. So yeah, shrimp, man, we eat a pile of shrimp.
I found that in my life, I grew up in Western Maryland, which, people think of Maryland, they think of crabs and the Chesapeake Bay. We were nowhere near that. It was East West Virginia, that's where I grew up. And so, the further you move around the world, you start to see I think the coastal areas. I mean, I've heard oyster farms, shrimp, all the resources that are on the coast of this country are important to think of. And as a hunter, I'm kind of drawn to those things from my hunting of big game, small game, whatever, right? You start to think of things as a resource, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and we've got that here. I mean, the saltwater resource on the coast of North Carolina with all the seafood. I mean, what's so amazing is how close and personal it is.
Yeah.
So you just pulled up here. I mean, you walk out my front door and you take a right and you drive 2.5 hours and you're on the longest stretch of uninhabited coastline in eastern America. You turn left and go 3 hours, 3.5 hours, you're standing on top of the highest mountain east of the Mississippi.
Yep.
So when you think about what places like this have in the South, where we sort of straddle these worlds between mountains and coast, I mean, it is mind-boggling. The opportunity is just phenomenal. I mean, it's a great place to be.
Yeah. No, as a ardent advocate of the eastern seaboard, or just the eastern side of the country, as we were talking about before we hit record, a lot of people have put it on me as a member of Meat Eater to keep it even, to continually slip in those eastern sensibilities to our Western Bozeman offices. And we have a few Midwesterners in there, but nobody strictly from the East, until we hired Anthony Licata, and now he's bringing a little that New York flavor, Pennsylvania flavor to the conversation. So we're getting it covered, but that is something that we think about, it, the sensibility. I grew up much in the same as you're talking about. We lived in Western Maryland, but we could take an 1.5-hour drive and be at the bay. Blue crabs and oysters and sea ducks and ducks and geese like you wouldn't believe. And so, yeah, we understood that there's not a lot of places where you can have those two environments in such a short, span of driving.
I think here a lot of sportsmen tend to be specialists in generalizing, right? Or generalists in specializing. Not sure how that would work, but we do so much. I mean, from Labor Day until March, we can hunt. We have a huge, long deer season from early September all the way to January. So I do think people tend to live that lifestyle year round, no doubt. But I think this East-West thing, we see that in conservation activism and politics, and advocacy. We see it in terms of, there is sort of this schism east and west, but from the Eastern perspective, the way that I put it is the West is critical to every hunter and angler in North America, whether you involve yourself in Western hunting or whether it's this sort of aspirational idea, right? All of the old Remington calendars, the old Winchester calendars, it's these big scenes of hunter versus moose or elk or bear. You don't see a lot of scrapping with squirrels and woodcock on those old calendars.
Puddle ducks, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's important from an aspirational perspective, but I think Eastern U.S. hunters, I think we're sort of coming into our own in terms of telling our own narrative and telling that story, and not feeling like it's always got to be the story of Eastern hunters moving west.
Well, and you think about the Southeastern, you write for Garden and Gun, you've written a lot about things that are happening in the cultural significance in the Southeast. When I think of the Southeast, I think of that culture, right? This real distinct, real flavorful culture that's aspirational for that reason. It's not aspirational because the big peaks that you might go in, or we think of like biodiversity of game for hunters. It's the culture that kind of wins through. That's why I feel that a lot of your reality TV shows are based in Louisiana, because there's such a rich culture that you can dig into there. And in the West, the visual can sometimes be as aspirational as anything.
No doubt. And and that idea of sort of solo hunting in the West, pitting yourself against the elements, pitting yourself against that big game animal, I think is fabulous. And we certainly have that. We certainly have that in the East. But I think lost a little bit in the conversation are those hunters specifically who enjoy the social aspects. I'm a member of a hunting club, like a lot of folks in this part of the world. We hunt public lands, but I'm a member of a hunting club. I drive 50 minutes east, and I've got 3,700 acres and a camp and swamps and fields and woods and people that I love being outdoors with. And a lot of our members, they probably don't step foot on public lands ever, but they're a part of this conversation too. They're a part of this conservation movement as well. And I think you're right, Ben. I think we've got to figure out a way to dovetail these in and celebrate the differences, but a lot of commonalities as well.
Yeah, and it's hard. I think in this day and age in our media space, this well, that like the aspirational in the digital space for sure, the aspirational. It's hard to set beside each other like a bugling bull elk coming down a ridge and a whitetail walking on a fence row, a 6-point whitetail walking down a South Carolina fence row, something like that. It's hard to put those two beside each other, but we have to find ways to do that. And like I said, I think there are certainly inroads to just making sure we're seeing all those perspectives, as hard as that is to do.
Yeah, and I think setting them beside each other may be the challenge. These are each pursuits that are worthy of their own merits. And so I do think we have to be careful in this industry, whether it's media, whether it's advertising, whether it's marketing, that we can't forget that not everyone is a backcountry archer. B, not everybody really wants to be a backcountry archer. There are a lot of folks that would just as soon follow their feist dog through the fall woods chasing squirrels, but they've got as much a connection to our heritage as any other hunter.
Yeah, and I think that I've been guilty of this a lot, of thinking of some of those heritages and those cultures as like Bubba culture.
No doubt.
less intellectual than my culture, or less intellectual in the way that I put my pursuits out there, the way that I think of hunting, and that's some bullshit. Like it just is. I mean, the way that our hunting is connected to whatever you'll define as Bubba culture, that's as inherent as somebody out west who grew up on a ranch. I mean, it just is.
Yeah, and Bubbas aren't defined by their driver's licenses, their addresses, right? I do think that this growing interest in intellectualizing our pursuits is going to make all the boats rise in this tide. And I'm thrilled to hear and to read and to be a small part of that conversation of some deep thinking about what it means to be a hunter and an angler in American society today. Because a lot of the early deep thinkers, we hold up Aldo Leopold, as the patriarch of this. While he cut his teeth, he cut his teeth actually in the Midwest. Long before he went out west. And when he didn't write much of his Western work until he was back on his farm in the Midwest. So it's an exciting time to be around, to think about what our pursuits are going to look like in the next 20, 30, 50 years. Because in the last 20 or 30, 50 years, Ben, we didn't have these kinds of conversations. And so I'm excited about that. It's a little nerve-wracking, too, to think about the pressures that are on us. There's no doubt. But it's fun, and it's exciting, and it's a positive that we're all kind of grappling with this.
Yeah, and I think you said it right. It's a conversation, right? I so often get people that will say, like, you didn't debate that guy hard enough, or you didn't. Well, we talk about a lot of contentious issues on the show, and I purposefully, for whatever reason, I'm insane. If I see something that I think is fraught with, entanglements and some perils of our modern ways of thinking, I run towards it and try to figure it out. That puts me in a lot of crappy situations. But I think it also elevates that we can have these conversations. We can have, we can take an issue that we didn't, like my dad's generation didn't think about or didn't vocalize if they were thinking about it, and have that outright and say this, baiting or, whatever, you could just pick many subjects, and say we can have this conversation. And it's the fact that we have the conversation that'll help us get down the road in 10, 15, 20 years to a comfortable place if we ever get there. But it's the openness that.
And especially now, as so much emphasis is going towards R3 and bringing on new hunters and new kinds of hunters, which I fully support. And that's fabulous. And I'm thrilled to see some success in that. But, we exist within this ecosystem of heritage and history. And you and I can think about sporting ethics, and it's just sort of second nature, right? We think about not crossing, and this isn't an ethical thing, but not crossing a fence with a gun in your hand. It never occurs to us to deal with those kinds of issues. When you and I were coming up, I remember the little cartoons of the 10 Commandments of gun safety, right? The very first,
Dude, I remember that.
Black and white illos, and the first one was muzzle control. Don't point your gun at anything you don't intend to shoot, right? Well, I don't want to sound like kids today, but kids today are raised from the age of insanely young to point a gun and shoot at the TV screen, at the video games. I'm not going to go down that road, but I'm fully convinced that we're seeing that ramifications. Now we're bringing in these new hunters, and we need them. We want them, but they don't have a little bit of the DNA of what it means ethically and responsibility to be a part of this tribe.
Yeah, and there's I always think about it. I've been thinking lately about baselines, like when I came into hunting, what was the baseline of expectation for me or for anyone around me? Like, how we set that baseline? How do we shift it, move it up? We'd like to always be moving forward where that baseline is safer, more responsible, more ethical, more thoughtful, more intelligent, all the things you'd want to be as a human or a hunter or whatever. But I think about the baseline of, or say, 1975, 1980, kind of at the peak of growth of hunting where we were, where our baseline for what's acceptable, and then where we are now and where we might be when my son is is 25 or, in 20 some years when that's where he is. So I wonder about that baseline. How have you seen it change? I mean, it's certainly always changing. It's just a perspective thing, but there is a perceived baseline there.
I mean, I think there is a perceived baseline. I think it was just sort of the coin of the realm when we were growing up. If you hunted, if you fished, you were handed down these traditions. And so there was a bit of an indoctrination process from your elders, right? So the challenge that we face today, and the opportunity as well, is when that indoctrination phase is taken out of the equation, what do? I see this at our hunting club down east, right? So my son he's getting ready to turn 20. So when we joined that club, there were probably 4 or 5 members there, parents and kids, and they came into hunting. The dads had never hunted in their life, never thought they would hunt, could have cared less about learning how to hunt, but their sons wanted it so badly that how what happened is they were willing to learn to help their son reach their passion, or their daughter reach their passion. And so what we're seeing is younger generations reaching up and pulling older generations into our tradition. It's a 180-degree flip.
That's wild.
From what you and I saw. And so that's an enormous opportunity. And I think it's a fleeting opportunity and one we really need to take advantage of right now. But it also is the challenge of when we've got young hunters and old hunters, and neither one of them really understand the traditions, right? They don't really understand, through no fault of their own, what the North American model of wildlife conservation is. They sure didn't grow up, looking at the 10 Commandments of gun safety cartoons in the back of Fur Fishing Game magazine. So that's the plate we have set in front of us.
Right, and I think that's why when we talk about making sure we've thought through and presented all the perspectives, east, west, north, whatever, that's important, because people are hunting is such a culturally varied thing that we do. It's impossible to line it up for somebody, say this is what it is, because they're always going to run into something that was outside their purview when they learned, whether they're 45 when they learned or they're 10 when they learned. Right. They're always going to run into something, and that's what we're going to do a little talk later on for the BHA group here in Raleigh, and a lot of it will be about that. Like there is no way that you can go hunting and not be faced with some sort of like internal crisis. It's
some conundrum.
Yeah. Whether there's someone with you or you're by yourself, whatever, you get to make a decision of, do I do this thing or not? And it's got fairly grave circumstances attached to it.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there, because they're great and they're super friendly, and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
And a lot of those decisions are being made a bit in a vacuum right now, where maybe they weren't in earlier generations, where there was just sort of more context, I guess. But again, I am stoked that these kinds of conversations, the one you and I are having right now, the one we're going to have later at this ethics forum, they're taking place more and more often. But I'd like to see within the industry an effort to reach out to to clubs, to organizations, and help them understand. While we don't want to necessarily codify sporting ethics for everyone, this is a conversation that needs to take place. And it needs to take place more than the few minutes you're going to get in a hunter education course.
Yeah, and and just to frame it up for folks somehow, like at least try to set it up in a way that like here is how you can make your decisions. If you're wondering, maybe a good way to get from oh, I have a bow in my hand, oh, there's a deer, to oh, I'm sending an arrow. Like, how do you get from A to B to B to C and on down the road? Like, I never had that, and I made a lot of crappy decisions because I didn't ever have it. So if we could somehow provide it to folks, I think that would be, that'd be beneficial. But how do we do it? What's the way to do it?
Well, I mean, I think it comes from strong mentors, and folks stepping up and stepping out. But it's tough. It's tough to look at your buddy and go, really?
Yeah.
350-yard shot, 250-yard shot, 175-yard shot, and it's the only shot you're going to take all year long with a rifle you hadn't picked up from last year. What are you thinking?
Yeah, that's 100%. We had a guy come up at BHA and say, I'm hunting with my buddy. He's a bit of a-hole. Like, he just he's doing it for the gram. And I was like, I'm uncomfortable hunting with him just because of the way that I see that he acts and kind of the results of his actions. And my first reaction was like, well, then just don't go with him anymore. He's like, well, this is my best friend. I said, well, you're one of the only folks in a situation to set this shit straight, but it ain't going to be comfortable at all. But you're one of the only folks I could probably go to. Like, you're one of my best friends, and you're acting like this isn't the way to go. That's tough, man. Yeah,
nobody wants to nanny another hunter.
No, I don't want to. If somebody came up to me and said, "Hey," I'd be like, "Peace out, get out of here, man."
Yeah,
yeah. I have a podcast. People. There's only 1,000 of us,
right,
standing in this room of 1,000 people.
But it's tough. I don't hesitate ever to tell someone when they've pointed their gun muzzle at me hunting.
Oh.
Right? I made that decision long ago. Just say, hey, just want you to know what you did, and let's, because I'm sure I've done it to others, and I want people to point it out to me. Although I try to think that I'm always aware of muzzle. So it's not a far step to go to the next level and go, okay, when I see behaviors that, let's don't say they're questionable. Let's certainly don't say they're wrong, but they demand thoughtful reflection.
Yeah.
How do you approach that? The hunters who I mean, and I hear it all the time. Oh yeah, it's 200 yards shy. I just thought I'd give it a crack, and I missed. Well, there's a much higher chance that you actually wounded that deer than you ever missed that deer. And so thinking of it in those terms may help, but it is tough to wag that finger and go, look, you need to do it my way, right? That's what we're going to talk about tonight, but it is a tough situation.
Yeah, it's tough. I think I personally get it a lot where people say, who are you to talk about that? I said, I'm nobody. I literally am nobody, but I would I'd like to think that just by bringing it up and allowing you the opportunity to disagree with me on these things, that we're starting some sort of new dialogue as to how we get to the end point. Like, who am I? I'm just the guy bringing it up. Hopefully more folks want to continue to bring it up in their circles. But I think, to your point, if you're the guy in the group that is kind of the arbiter of some of these situations, and you're seen and respected as that, you then internalize that and become more ethical yourself. I feel like you have to. You're thinking of, well, if I'm going to be the guy who's saying, watch your muzzle, I better damn well watch my muzzle when I'm in the woods. So I think there's a kind of a dual effect to having that position. And
this is a bit of a modern construct as well, because we're all hesitant to hurt anyone's feelings and to be considered, the know-it-all. Because, back in the day, the deer camps of yore, old Ben didn't mind a bit busting your chops if you did something that was untoward. And so maybe there's a little bit of that as well. But it's a matter of framing this in a modern way. Look, we all understand through social media and everything else that hunting is under a brighter spotlight. And so it's incumbent on all of us, you, me, as experienced as we are, to look at how we've approached this and some of the decisions we've made and just ask ourselves, is there a way to improve? Is there a way to have a more thoughtful approach to hunting and fishing? Yeah, no, I mean, I had a situation turkey hunting here not long ago where I had a brand new shotgun that was came from Weatherby Incorporated. That's a sponsor alert. That's the new 18i. That they gave me to use. It's a fantastic shotgun. Killed many turkeys. I have 6 of them right here in my desk drawer. Yeah, I mean, these just pull this drawer out. That's industry talk, guys, before we get free stuff. Well, I had it, and I just didn't take the time to put a sling on it. And then as I'm walking around with another person in the woods, I realized without a sling, there's all these other ways to hold a shotgun that cause a lot of muzzle control issues. Yeah. And as I'm walking around with it in my hand, just holding it kind of horizontal parallel to the ground as I'm walking, I realize if somebody walks in front of me, I'm immediately doing that. So if I hold it against my shoulder, if somebody's behind me to the left, especially if you're in, out in the West where people are at different elevations, you're walking kind of with your hunting partner. So I realized, like, hey, if I had a sling, I kind of know this thing's stable. I know where the barrel's pointed. So something I just realized walking around, I was still, what I feel safe with my muzzle, but I feel like, oh, that's one little step that I can do to make sure that I don't have 8 different ways to carry this shotgun that are comfortable on long totes. So, and actually in the last hunt I did this year, I didn't even load it. I just carried it with the action open because I'm like, it's just, there's too many variables here. I'm just not going to do it. Yeah. And truthfully, these are almost the easy questions, right? I mean, they're the ones that are fraught because we're talking about gun safety here. But when we move into the real ethical conundrums of the aesthetics of the hunt versus the ethics of the hunt, it's thorny, stony ground. Yeah, it is, and I've been enheartened by people listen to this thing every week. I often bring up some of the same issues with different people, and I think that's the idea, is to collect perspectives from around the country of people that are of various expertises and skill levels of what it really means to them. Like what is this to someone sitting in North Carolina as opposed to someone sitting in Texas as opposed to there are such a tapestry of perspectives that you can go pick from. And if you can really understand that you and I go hunting, there might be some things that I do that you think are unsafe that I've been doing my whole life, and there are folks out west that that's just what you do. So it's good to just have that in your mind and just try to judge a situation rather than just always bring your own perspectives to it. That certainly helped me, and even like I said, even this year I just realized a few things that are like, okay, each year I'm going to learn something. Yeah. Hopefully learn many things. Yeah. We can't approach this thinking that we got it all figured out. I mean, every new technology brings another ethical quandary. And that's like there's never been a time where like we've been able to hunt. It's never been undisturbed. It's never been unmoved. We're always moving it.
and it seems like we're always moving it forward. Some of us like to move it back. We take a recurve bow or a self bow out. We were trying to move it back to where it was, but that baseline is always shifting around. Always. Technology does it. Our own personal feelings towards what we're doing do it. It's always moving. It's moving underneath us as we go. And that's something that I've certainly come to know and learn. It's like if you think it's all like you're going to be the center point of the activity, you're wrong. You're always going to be either moving with it or against it.
Yeah, and what the it is important, right? I mean, I do think in this modern period where there's so much emphasis on sort of self-actualization and you doing the right thing for you and don't worry about if it's the right thing for anyone else. And I think some of that can creep into sporting ethics as well, that I'm making this decision because it's right for me at this particular point in time, and none of these externalities really enter in the equation. Well, I applaud that sort of individualistic streak. You know, the heritage of sporting ethics does not when you look at Aldo Leopold's writing, and some of his quotes are the ones that are used to sort of underscore this notion of, you are alone. Your behavior when you are alone is the defining aspect of sporting ethics. But in his later writings, he went on to really sort of evolve that perspective that ethics only exist in a community of other perspectives. And I think we're definitely seeing that these days, and the ramifications of that in our passions.
Right, they're only worthy when compared to one another. Like it's this thing I'm doing is okay for me, and you're doing it over here, and there's 100 other people that are appalled by it. Like that comparison is important.
Right.
It's important for all of us to understand. That's where it gets sticky. I had somebody email in the other day about, is the discussion that I've been having muddying the waters? Like, is this the presentation of, is it legal or illegal? Well, if it's legal, it's a different conversation. If it's been made to be illegal, you just don't do it. That's how this works. So we have a social contract that says,
right,
we construct a way to act
that the illegal is by default unethical.
Now and that's where it's like, well, that's muddy in the waters. That's not always true. I said, look, this we've already admitted this conversation to be almost impossibly entangled. Let's not entangle it further by looking at state by state laws and seeing if we feel in the modern sense they're ethical. I understand that is a reality. Let's leave it off the table for now. So there's folks that would want to work on the edges, but there's so much like this conversation that's kind of like right down the middle. Like, what the hell are you doing? How are people reacting to it? And at the end of the day, you feel comfortable with what you've done, and feel that it's good and right.
And a lot of the stuff, it's like I tell my kids, if you do a decent job of bringing up your children, they get to the age to where the discussion isn't what was the right way to behave and what was the wrong way to behave. I mean, at some point, the discussion is, what did you choose? Which road did you go down and why? A lot of these things, even with the hunting, I think if people understood the broader context, a lot of these real sticky issues, shooting at long ranges, which is not an issue at all if you have the skills to do it. But a lot of these things will sort of go by the wayside, or we'll handle them in a meaningful way with a little bit more discussion and understanding. Because, most of the time when you're an adult, it's not a matter of knowing what's right and wrong, right? It's having the guts and gumption to choose the right thing when you really, really, really want to shoot that buck at 400 yards.
Yeah. And then when it becomes something different than what it really is, which is a living, breathing thing that you intend to, like, we talk about it in a lot of ways. It's a resource, it's a this, it's a that, but it's really, when it comes down to it, it's a living, breathing being standing across from you somewhere.
And I know you agree with me on this. I don't harvest. I mean, I kill animals.
Yeah.
I think there's a level of honesty, and you've talked about this. We don't need to necessarily go down that road, but I do think that helps us understand the sort of level of responsibility.
Yeah, and I think if we can get to, I've had a lot of these same conversations around women in hunting, around, how we speak about what we call ourselves, sportsmen, sportswomen, sports people. Like a lot of people are all spun up on this right now, what we call ourselves, what's the proper name to call our community. I think it's a good point to say it's all about kind of getting to what's really, I think the greater society expects us to be honest with them about what we're doing. You and I both know, like I said, not to belabor it, but the harvest thing came from a remarketing of what we're doing, not a real sense of being truly honest with what we're pursuing.
Right. And so I say, let's move this conversation as an industry into helping people understand why we do this and what we're doing. So we can be honest and say we're taking a life to give life, and this is why.
Yeah. Have you ever had, I've become the guy at the dinner party that if there's a vegan there, they sit them by me, or I'm always, hey, this guy's a hunter, tell him why, to become that guy. And I don't mind it, I like it, but at some level that's where we are. Like all of us have the opportunity to, some of us more than others, tell that story. And it may seem like mental masturbation to be having these conversations over and over and over again, but each time you do it, you're just like sharpening a knife. Like when someone asks you a very tough but obvious question, you should have a very simple answer for it. Why do you kill things? Eating them? But why do you go off for 10 days? And why are you? So there's this cascade of questions that someone who doesn't understand what you're doing could answer you or ask you. And I think your answers inform how much you've really thought about it. And I think a lot of us, me included, for a lot of years, didn't really think about it all that much, and weren't ever asked to think about it all that much.
Because for a lot of us, it was just what a lot of other people did.
Yeah.
I mean, raising kids in the city. So we're here in Raleigh, a pretty big city.
Yeah, we should set it up. You have a son and a daughter, Jack and Marky.
Yep. My son is about to turn 20. My daughter, Marky, man, I better get this right. She's 20. She's about to turn 23.
Yeah, baby.
All of them here in the next month. Yeah.
And so, and Marky does not hunt, and Jack is deep in hunting and fishing.
Jack is deep into hunting and fishing. Marky does not hunt. I took Marky hunting plenty when she was young. And I've written about this, and she was totally enamored of the whole in the tree stand and watching. But, she was going to be watching that bobcat hanging out on a log, right? And so it became pretty clear fairly early that hunting and fishing weren't her things. But since my whole family, we camped and we backpacked, and you can see, it was just this whole environment is what they grew up in. And I had this whole other life as a journalist, sort of. I'm a contributing editor for Audubon magazine, and I've done a lot of work in Central America. For some reason, although I speak zero Spanish, for 7 or 8 years, I had a lot of work in Central America for Audubon magazine. And so, whereas Jack was always going hunting and fishing with me, I hauled Marky to the most god-awful places in Costa Rica and Honduras and even north into northern Quebec. And so, and I firmly believe that she was able to enjoy that and appreciate that and make that a part of her life because she grew up sort of with the rigors of camping and with getting up early and going hunting. And I remember one of the few times when, as parents, Julie and I would look at ourselves and we'd say, we did a good thing, was we were packing to go somewhere. I can't even remember where it was. And Marky was upstairs. She was a little slip of a girl. And she hollered down from upstairs, "Mommy, am I going to pee inside or outside?" That's all she needed to know to pack. Was she going to sleep in a tent or was she going to sleep in a hotel room? And we were like, yes, we did something right. It wasn't long after that Jack hollered down asking if he could take his hatchet to Sunday school, and that was one of the times when we looked at each other and thought we still got a little work to do.
Good days and bad days. That's fair. Yeah. No, I think it's. I grew up in a house like that. My brother never got into hunting, and I did, of course. And you look back at that, and him and I are kind of the same guy. Except for that, it's hilarious, kind of hilariously similar to things we're interested in, and just like it diverged at that. I would guess that it's just by the time my dad really took me when I was 12 or 13, but by the time my brother would have got into it as well, he was into other things. This is like just never happened for him.
Oh, mm-hmm.
If we could go back in time, knowing what I know now, I'd be like, hey man, you really need to come along. Like you really need to be a part of this because you're missing something. But at that time, it was just I did this and he did sports and girls and I did hunting and girls when I can get to it.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
So you don't really know where those things diverge.
You don't know, and doing what I do for a living, I hunted and fished just a lot, and I would hunt and fish for work, and I'd come home after an assignment. Well, that was work. Yeah. I was ready to go hunting and fishing. And thankfully, I married someone who understood that. But some of the best advice that Julie, my wife, ever gave me, and she had to give it to me a lot over the years, was to meet these kids where they were. We want them to experience the world that we love, but not everybody's wired for it. And with Jack, and I made some big mistakes with Jack early on hunting and fishing. No question about it. I almost lost him to hunting early on. But with Marky, what was important was getting her outside and having that father-daughter relationship that even now is pretty rare, I think. And the fact that we ended up traveling so much together, just her and I, over the years, has paid enormous benefits in terms of our level of communication and our relationship. But it was I was always trying to get them to the next level of whatever I wanted to do, and you got to meet them where they are.
Yeah, my son currently would be like dinosaurs. I got to meet him at dinosaurs, which we do. We do a lot. We do a lot of dinosaurs. But yeah, and I think that's great advice. Do you feel? I mean, your kids are pretty close in age. I'd say 3 years ish.
Yeah.
Do you feel that there was ever a time where you realized that they were that different, that that you had to handle one way? I mean, you've kind of alluded to it, but do you remember making a conscious choice to kind of foster one's hunting and one's more just love of being outside?
Yeah, my daughter and I had this thing called daddy-daughter deer camp, where we would go slum it up in a little mom and pop motel and deer hunt at the lease that I had. Which was about an hour away. It didn't have a hunting camp on it, so we stayed at this little hotel. And I remember one day they were harvesting sweet potatoes in the field, and she was totally enamored of the whole process. And we must have come back with 80 pounds of sweet potatoes. I don't even think we hunted that morning. And I talked to her about this. I said, Margie, you were a whole lot more interested in hanging around, with the potato farmers than you were in being in a tree stand. And she started to help me realize that it just wasn't there. But I was already doing so much hunting with Jack that I recognized, that I needed to be proactive with my daughter. So that's when I started. Every year since she was a little girl, she and I have traveled somewhere, just the two of us, for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days, and that's been our thing. And so that's important. But I do remember with Jack, I took him deer hunting when he was little, too little for too long. When deer hunting with an 8-year-old.
Boring. Well, not cold here, but boring.
Oh, it's just an exercise in, sit down, don't move, shut up, don't scratch, don't, And he didn't want to disappoint me. And I didn't learn about this, till several years after all this. And he got to where he just couldn't stand to go. But he was not going to tell me no. So I took him duck hunting one time. And Ben, I remember we were standing in the swamp, and I looked over, and he was doing this. He was moving his index finger almost imperceptibly to scratch his nose, because he knew if he moved it fast, I'd be on him like I was in that tree stand, right? And I said, Jack, when you're duck hunting, you can scratch your nose, we can chit-chat, you can eat a granola bar. And honestly, I saw the weight just lift off his shoulders.
O'Reilly Auto Parts are in the business of keeping your car on the road. O'Reilly Auto Parts offer friendly, helpful service and the parts knowledge you need for all your maintenance and repairs. If you're confused about what part you need, like what wipers are going to be the best, what replacement headlights are going to be the best, go into O'Reilly and talk to the people that work there, because they're great and they're super friendly, and they'll get you squared away where you walk out knowing you got the right thing. They've got thousands of parts and accessories in stock, either in-store or online, so you never have to worry if you're in a jam. Do you need your windshield wipers replaced? You need a brake light fixed? You need some quick service? They'll help you find the right part or point you to the nearest local repair shop for help. The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts are your one-stop shop for all things auto do-it-yourself, and you can find what you need in-store or online. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today or visit us at O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. That's O'ReillyAuto.com/MeatEater. You ever get that feeling you're stuck inside staring at screens and a primal urge kicks in? You crave wide open spaces, fresh air, the chance to connect with the land. Well, maybe it's time to find your own piece of the wild, but searching for property can be a maze. That's where Land.com comes in. They got millions of listings across the country, from mountain ranches to hidden fishing holes. Their search tools are like a seasoned guide helping you narrow down what you want. Land.com isn't just about buying and selling. It's about finding a place to hunt, fish, explore, or simply sit by a campfire and listen to the crickets. So head over to Land.com today to turn one day into today, because trust me, there's nothing quite like the feeling of standing on your own piece of earth. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
And so in years to come, I'd have to say, Jack, just because you can talk in a duck blind doesn't mean you have to always talk in a duck blind. But ever since then, it was feathers for him. He'd still go deer hunting, and he may come back to it. He started to make some noise about coming back to it. But from then on, it was birds and shotguns and shooting. He liked to shoot. Squirrels were good too.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've got to figure out, what trips the trigger.
That's good insight too. It's like you wonder if it's the chicken or the egg. Are you out there doing things to find it, or is the opposite true?
Yeah.
How do you? Is it always there, and you're just trying to get everything else out of the way to get it?
Yeah.
I wonder that about. Yeah, I have I guess a generalist mentality. I just love doing it all. I haven't found any one thing. I could probably rank them. Turkey hunting currently is like the thing, but I wouldn't, if you suddenly said, hey, here's a duck boat and a bunch of decoys and somebody to teach you how to call like a champion, I'd be just as into that as anything else. So I feel like I'm lucky that way, but there's some people that are just, doing that chicken or the egg dance.
Yeah. And I figured out early enough that what I wanted them to leave the woods with was the feeling that, God, that was amazing. That was so much fun. I can't wait to go back. And if that meant the squirrel hunt was over in 3 minutes after legal shooting light, and we spent the rest of the morning shooting sycamore balls in the creek, then that's what it meant.
Yeah.
But yeah, doing what I do, I'm terribly goal oriented, and that's a terrible way to bring up kids. I'm super thankful that I learned that early, and I'm super thankful I had a wife that helped me learn that early.
One thing I learned I learned it from multiple people, but I learned from my dad. Is like my dad wasn't really, let's say, like, gear oriented. He had a lot of. He is a guy that kind of knew the natural world ins and out, birds, trees, whatever. But just didn't really ever change his oil. But I had a neighbor who was kind of a little bit the opposite. Didn't really know. Didn't know trees, birds, whatever. He was all kind of, get your hands dirty. So I had my dad very much let me go with him to go change my oil, to do certain things. I think my dad recognized like what he could bring. And I remember later on, I'll tell this story just to make my parents proud. I got early on in my driving career, I got what they call like a DUI kind of thing. It wasn't even a DUI. I think it was just I had a beer in the car and I wasn't old enough to have one. So I had to go to a class and so I didn't get in trouble. So one of those like scared straight type classes.
Yep.
And so I went there and my dad was sitting with me and they were interviewing me about kind of like my influences, or good and bad. And I remember my dad saying, other than your father, is there a positive influence in your life that you would call a mentor? I'm like, yeah, man. Bill Miller's my neighbor. I remember like looking at my dad and him looking at me like, yeah, you understand that, this other influence is important. Did you guys have that for your kids? Or like, if you didn't, do you wish you did? Like how did that go for them with their life?
Have other influences?
Yeah, other influences.
That's an interesting question because they didn't have a lot of other influences in terms of the outdoors. My father died when I was a kid, so they didn't really have that sort of grandfather, uncles, aunts, other family members. So in terms of bringing them up with a love of the outdoors, it was Julie and I. Because Julie loves to camp, loves to hike, used to love to backpack, and we were constantly taking the kids out. That's what, when you look at a family's budget, you can kind of figure out what they think is important, right? How much of their mortgage is going to their house payment, how much of it is going to their car payment. And we love to travel. That's where we spend our family money on, and we were very intentional about that. And so I think that probably had as much of an influence on them these others. I lament the fact that my kids didn't have the older generation in front of them. And frankly, Julie and I probably overcompensated in ways because they didn't have that. But they seem to have turned out okay. Right now they seem pretty
good.
They're on a boat at Cape Lookout, maybe coming back, and I hadn't gotten a note from the Coast Guard yet. So I'm thinking we did something okay, but there's still time for that to go south.
Oh, we've been looking at I don't know if it's been intentional here lately. Ranella and I and Giannis, it was kind of triggered by Steve asking one live podcast we did. Steve asked a question like, "What did your dad teach you in hunting that you carry with you?" And we all answered kind of, I think, like the pat answer, and we all had something because our dads were all very involved in our upbringing outdoors. And then a couple weeks later, we're at a show, and he asked, "What did your mom do?" Right? Somebody had written in like, "Wait a minute, is it only the father here?" I was like, a non-hunter writing in like, "I don't understand why you never talk about any other influences, or at least you focus so heavy on that the influences of your father." And we started to then answer like, "What did your mother do?" And all of us were kind of like, and then I could just see, I was looking at the other guys up there, and I could see that like things were sparking in their heads that they'd never thought of before.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to me to just kind of think about those influences, how you either consciously or unconsciously were shaped by them.
Yeah, my mother was the great enabler.
Yeah.
Since I didn't have a father that took me hunting and fishing, and she knew how absorbed I was in this world, even though I had no one in my family who hunted, no one in my life experience who hunted. I didn't know a hunter. When my dad died, I was 13. And even by then, I mean, I subscribed to Field and Stream and Outdoor Life and Fur Fishing Game and all that stuff. You know, I had a pile of pine straw in the backyard and a bow. You know, the kids going to football practice would holler out at me, "Nature boy," because I'd be back there shooting while they were.
Flair back then.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, Ben, I remember driving to the mountains as a kid, and I was laying down in the back of our 1973 Pinto station wagon, of course, with no seat belts.
Oh yeah.
And I saw out of the window a big field and a little speck of blaze orange in a tree, and it was a deer hunter. And I absolutely remember asking myself, would I ever get to go hunting? Was there any path in my life that would lead me to that? And there wasn't until my father passed away and a friend at church did what we all tell each other we need to do. He took a kid hunting. And to his great credit, Keith Gleason, he didn't take this kid hunting on Saturday and get me all hopped up and then walk out of my life. From the first time we went squirrel hunting in October of 1974 until I graduated from college,
Wow.
he took me. We went every Saturday of the season. And so it was one of those few times where you could point to a moment when your life just takes a dramatic change. And so my mom, to speak to your question, she was the one who allowed me to do all the stuff that she was super uncomfortable with. You know, I mean, I was a snake freak, you know, like so many of us, you know, we grew up on this creek, and she would let me hibernate my snakes in pillowcases, knotted pillowcases in the refrigerator's vegetable crisper. You know, she would do, God bless her soul. She would.
That's pretty great.
She knew how badly I wanted this. And so I think even today, I think that's probably as much a part of my success, be that as it may, as anything, is there's a lot of mornings when I wake up and I'm just amazed at what I'm doing. And I want other people to realize that their love of hunting and fishing is, you know, these sports are imperiled from outside forces, whether they're economic or whether they're social or whether they're cultural. And if we don't figure out a way to address those challenges, this is going to slip away.
Yeah. Well, we talk about it as a community, I feel like, and and when you tell a story like that, to me, it's sobering, and it's a little bit emotional to think of. We always talk about R3 and we made up these fancy little things, but like we really just talk about affecting someone's life, not just the day that they're with you, and that's the reason I do what I do, I think, because I identified this enriching thing, like this, oh, look at this thing no one really knows about. They don't really know about the way I know now about it. And it's shrinking, for fuck's sake. That makes no sense to me. And so it's engendered in me this like one willingness to fight, but also one willingness to appreciate what's currently here, because it is shrinking, and by any measure, you know, by almost all measures. So it's a sobering thought that you're a part of something that is been so enriching to your life and to others' lives, and people have given their time to kind of change your path, and you can do that for other people. It's just like this spider web of experiences that we're all together in, but that's closing in on us a little bit. Mm. And so,
and I think part of the success in that is celebrating all of the different ways that we choose to involve ourselves in this passion of hunting. You know, that one is not better than the other. That one is not more elevated. That, I mean, coast to coast, north to south, those feelings at sunrise, I think they're the same in a salt marsh as a Rocky Mountain ridge line.
Yeah.
You know, the heart can only beat so fast and so deep. And those moments like that, we max it out no matter where we're standing.
Yeah, and I think that's why we are drawn to these people that are able to codify the ideas, like, you know, Aldo and Teddy Roosevelt and all these writers, and I would put even yourself and guys like Steve Rinella and all these other writers and people that are able to take these ideas that we share and articulate them in such a way that, one, make them relatable, but two, make you realize that's how I'm feeling. Holy shit, that's how I'm feeling. That's it. And then once you've shared that with someone, and it's beyond measure, I feel like.
And as lucky as I feel to be a hunter, I feel equally blessed to write about hunting.
Yeah.
Because I do think that's been, I hate to call that a shtick, but I've done a lot of writing about, the cultural response to hunting and that personal response. I love to write stories that are just great stories of human character, and they happen to be told through the medium of hunting and fishing. But there's something about this pursuit that is transcendent in a way that other quote unquote sports I don't think can be.
Yeah.
But then again, I was the kid that the football players called Nature Boy in the backyard. So what do I know?
Well, if you would have kept that and trademarked it, you could have been a wrestler. No, but I think it's true. And there's a lot of people, like the author Michael Pollan, who wrote the book Omnivore's Dilemma, talked about it in his book. He said, hunting is so incredibly different from the inside than it is from the outside. I mean, it's just this incredible core that no one gets to see because it's so hard to see it. I mean, it's like it's almost invisible unless you're there doing it, because there's so many ways to see it that don't seem productive. And, you imagine society and everyone that doesn't hunt is just asking the question, is this good for all of us? Is this good for everything? Is this good for what? Society and the way we think about animals and our interaction and our motivations? Are we good? Is this good? And we're like, yeah, fucking really good. But it's hard. I mean, we've struggled to articulate that, I feel like, over time.
Is it good?
We could say,
am I playing a role in it being good?
Yeah.
So that's sort of the question as well. I mean, we don't want to saddle people with all this philosophical baggage, You just want to go hunt, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But
I keep coming back to that because I've argued this with a lot of people, and sometimes I would step back from it because I don't want to be that guy, right? The guy in the room going like, "Don't you guys want to think a little deeper?" This is a douchey thing to say sometimes, oftentimes. But I also want to say, like, in our little community here of people, if you would tell me that half or more want to just go out and have fun, I would say that's fine. Whatever number of us just feel that this is in their nature and they're going to do it and they're going to have a good time and that's what they get from it, I'm totally fine with that. I would argue that there needs to be a percentage of on the other side that's answering these tough questions and having, sometimes these endless conversations around some of the more intricate parts of it. So when someone asks, you have somebody to send them to.
And I think there's that percentage of people are the ones that I think are the ones that are on those ridge lines and in those swamp bottoms, just feeling totally blessed by this moment.
Yeah, and if it's guys like you and other people I've had on this podcast, like if hunting was a representative government, like who would we elect? Because we have to elect someone to explain the shit we do to other people. Like we have to elect a body to allow us to just go and have fun, and elect a body of people to talk about it and think about it and reason it outside of the science and biology that goes on the state game agency level and the federal level, whatever. Just as a theory and philosophy, I think that's how I look at it. There's got to be some people out there that are doing that, and like exploring the human elements of hunting and things like that. Just a little bit deeper than most people would want to go with it.
Well, at the dawn of our modern civilization, or at our modern culture, people sat around in tunics and sandals and thought about what it means to be human, and what it means to to engage in society and what good government means. So, I mean, I think it's a fine thing to sit around in our flip-flops and flannel shirts and think about,
that's right.
What does it mean to be a taker of life?
Yep. Yeah, that's the question. Yeah, and I think it's that conversation. Like, we'll never get there. You're never be like, oh, you know what, guys? I hadn't thought of it this way, but here it is. But you can certainly continue to explore it, and that's another part of, I think, how the hunting community has grown and how we talk to each other. The willingness that people are going to come to Raleigh and sit and listen to us kind of have this conversation on a wonderful evening where they could be doing anything else, I think is just evidence of the elevation of the willingness to have that conversation, and that's a pretty huge win in my estimation.
Yeah, it's a pretty good time to be a hunter.
This may be the time, Like I think we just being self-critical, we can always throw stones at it, but I think I've quickly seen when I first came in the industry and social media really got going, there was some really bad stuff happening. And over the last 4 or 5 years, maybe I'm in a bubble. I think we're all in our like self-contained internet bubble for reasons of in our control and outside of our control. But you see the through lines of people that are really thinking hard, and the way that they communicate. And so you see it. I see it a lot. It's you would like to think in groups like BHA, and I was just with Whit Fosberg from TRCP. You'd like to think that's all, like the fact that somebody's willing to put their money down and join one of those is signifies that that's really, really, truly going on.
Yeah, and I think with the growth of these organizations, people are recognizing the threats that we have, the opportunities that we have, and that, hey, man, this tribe is big, right?
It's real big.
You go to that BHA rendezvous, you go to some of these big meetings, and you look around, and that's the response we hear a lot. I found my people.
Oh yeah,
right.
We're at the rendezvous. You and I must have heard that. I don't know. 3 dozen times. I don't know how many times. Many times.
Yeah. So that's strong medicine. But let's also not get away from the fact that it's a hoot to put on waders, throw out decoys, stomp around in the swamp, have a gun, and be able to engage in this. But it's fun. That fun, like any freedom, isn't free either. And so,
well, it's great. I mean, I think, being able to go and do that, and then in the quiet times when we're not doing that, have these conversations, and then go out and let them inform and go back and forth from that. It's great, man. I love doing it. There's a lot of people listening to this I think love to hear it.
I'm assuming so.
Got a lot of good reviews over time, but I do believe that this conversation, however organic our conversation here has been, it's a little sobering to me to think of the point from it that I'll probably take forward with me, is to think of how just you didn't have a father around, somebody in your life picked you up and took the time and changed your life, and then cascading on, changed the lives of your children and probably their children, and on and on and on we go. This is like just one. You had the desire, somebody saw it and jumped on it and helped you.
But that's the power of this sport, man. You feel it and I feel it, and everybody listening feels it. These are life-changing experiences and life-affecting experiences we have out there.
You could spend your Saturday watching Tom Brady, or you could spend your Saturday like taking somebody outside, man, and possibly, hopefully, changing the way that they see the world, changing their life.
Who's Tom Brady?
I don't know. He's a
and
hockey.
What's this oil changing thing you were talking about?
I don't got time. We got time for that. Well, thank you, Edward. Appreciate what you do, and you can find your work in lots and lots of places. It'd be hard not to find it, I feel. You can find it at Field and Stream. You can find it at Garden and Gun. You can find it at Audubon. Like, where else? Lots of places.
DU Magazine and Men's Journal and shooting sportsman, and yeah, look at that big pile of notes over there. This is the part of my job nobody wants to hear about, is the sitting here and right. But hard to complain.
This podcast has taken me to a lot of people's. I try to do them inside of people's, like personal space, and like this is the neatest. I've interviewed a lot of writers. Imagine like Hal Herring. I didn't get to go to his office, but I imagine like he just is a head poking out of papers.
Yeah.
That's my imagination there. Andrew McKean, he's the same way. A bunch of other folks we've had on. It's just like it just seems the writer's mind seems to be too cluttered to have time to clean shit up. But you have done it, sir.
Well, it depends on what I'm working on. Right now, I'm working on my column for Field and Stream, which was due at some point in the recent past.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So that's more of an essay thing. So I'm not covered up with notes. But there's other times when it's a mess. It's a mess.
Life's a mess. Well, one story at a time, folks. Remember that, as Eddie has always said, at least for the last week. One story at a time.
One story at a time.
Thanks, man.
All right, buddy.
I guess I grew up on an older.
That's it. That's all. Another episode of the podcast in the books. Thanks to Eddie T. Nickens. Thanks to all you dads out there here as we run up to Father's Day. So do something nice for your dad. Do something nice every day, but do something especially nice for Father's Day. Before we get any further, THC at themeateater.com, THC at themeateater.com. That is where I want you to write me all your emails. They've been flooding in here lately to the program. In fact, 10 to 15 a day rolling in. So it's really cool to see everything from Colonel Tom Kelly to ethics to Texas to anything you can think of that. To the Devil Makes Three, the song that a lot of you love and a lot of you hate. It's been great to read all those. I am reading them and will respond to them as soon as I possibly can. But thank you for writing in. Continue to send those audio clips to THC at themeateater.com. Send us the audio clips, and we'll play them at the end of each show. We need them from you. They're fun for me to listen to and fun for the rest of the audience. A lot of people have been commenting about how they love it. And again, we're going to continue to crank those out for you. What else? We got, it's almost too close to Father's Day, but, this will come. You'll have a few days after this airs. If you want a good Father's Day gift, go to themeateater.com, click on store. There's a lot of THC gear there. There's hoodies. There's Pro Nuance Anti-Bullshit t-shirts. There is our Aldo freaking Leopold tee. There's a bunch of stuff there that you can check out. And then, once you're there, then you can buy all kinds of other things. Meat Eater mugs, Meat Eater hats, Meat Eater tees. We just came out with a new Broadhead tee that Stephen Rennell himself came up with. It's pretty badass. So check it out at themeateater.com. Click on shop, and you're going to see it all there. It's great. Trust me. So without further ado, we're going to get you to a couple of reader voicemails, as we'll call them, and then we're going to get you to old number 7. Enjoy.
Man, that Stephen Rennell really came off as a highbrow kind of guy, throwing all our Game of Thrones love under the bus like that. I guess he doesn't have time for that. But I'll get over it. They say never really get to know your heroes or you'll be let down. Thanks, Ben, for keeping it real for us Game of Thrones fans. And to finish off the thought, Sportsman's Alliance, doing God's work. Wish I could support them more right now. Thanks for continuing to bring those guys on. I really get kind of uncomfortable talking about ethics because it's such a moving target for anyone in any place, whether it's ranching, pet ownership, hunting, fishing tournaments. It's a tough thing to define. Thanks for at least talking about it and the platform that you guys put forth. See you.
Hello, Ben and the guys at Hunting Collective. This is Armando Basulto. I'm from Western North Carolina, out here in the Smoky Mountain part of North Carolina. Big fan of the show, and I'm enjoying the last couple of episodes. Wondering if maybe on an upcoming episode you might touch a little bit more on trapping. You guys touched a little bit on it when you were discussing the North American model of wildlife, and you touched a little bit on it, but currently trapping is really under attack in so many states. It tends to be easily targeted because even some hunters don't understand it. It's kind of low-hanging fruit target for anti-hunters and people kind of that work against hunting and conservation. So I'm a hunter, but I'm also a trapper. I'm teaching my boys how to trap, and I know even I have some difficulty sometimes getting people to understand trapping as part of wildlife management and as a real tool. So anyway, hoping you guys can discuss it on an upcoming episode, and keep up the great work. Thanks, guys.
Jack Daniels, old number 7. Tennessee whiskey got me drinking in heaven, and angels start to look good to me. They're gonna have to deport me to the fiery deeps. Oh, to the fiery deeps. Drinking in the fiery deeps. Oh, to the fiery deeps. Drinking in heaven.
You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins. Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.